I've almost lost count of the number of Republican Easter commemorations I've filmed in Belfast over the years, marching up the Falls Road to Milltown Cemetery, where the IRA's dead lie buried. You would have thought that such semi-paramilitary displays have been consigned to history in the wake of the Good Friday Agreement 20 years ago. You would be wrong. This march is organised by a legal political party of dissident Republicans called Saoradh, Irish for liberation. Its supporters include prominent Republican dissidents like the Duffy brothers.
Brexit, in the context of Ireland, identified the failure to address the root cause of the conflict that exists between Britain and Ireland.
Which is?
Well, partition itself and the denial of Irish national sovereignty.
Saoradh rejects the Good Friday Agreement and regards the IRA and Sinn Féin's decision to embrace constitutional politics at Stormont as the great betrayal. This isn't really a paramilitary display, but it's pretty close to it. As you can see from the military uniforms, there are no balaclavas and no weapons, but the message is quite clear. For these people, or many of these people, the war is over. And the dissidents, have they got support?
No, they don't.
None at all?
They may have the ability to carry out individual actions, but, you know, all thinking Republicans are committed to peaceful and democratic means. The IRA is gone.
Some of the leaders of one of the largest dissident organisations are your former comrades. What would you say to them?
Go away.
I will respond back to Mr. Adams saying we've no intention of going home, Jerry.
The Chief Constable believes that the threat from the wider dissident movement is a real danger.
The threat that they pose is assessed as being severe. That is that an attack is highly likely.
Severe?
Yes, but their capability is quite limited. We're confident, for example, that we disrupt or stop more attacks than they get to actually carry out.
The police and MI5 have monitored and infiltrated the movement, as they once did with the IRA and Sinn Féin. Republicans have always been adept at exploiting issues that fuel their cause. For Saoradh and the dissidents, Brexit is manna from heaven.
Brexit has the potential to break up the British state, and as such it offers Irish Republicans an opportunity to realise our first great objective, the ending of the British occupation and the reunification of the Irish nation. And as history teaches us, it will inevitably stoke the fires of resistance against British rule in Ireland.
That resistance is now carried out by what Saoradh's supporters call the IRA. That's different from the IRA that ended its military campaign in the mid-1990s. The police and MI5 now refer to the dissidents' armed wing as the new IRA.
The new IRA was formed in 2012. It was a loose network of people who were still trying to develop violent attacks. They have carried out in around 40 attacks in the 6 years since they've been in existence. A number of people in the leadership positions would have been people who previously had an association with the Provisional IRA and couldn't bring themselves to support the peace process.
Just over 70 people have been murdered by dissident Republicans since the Good Friday Agreement that was designed to bring an end to the violence. Prison officer David Black was shot dead on his way to work. Another prison officer died in a bomb attack. Dissidents have also murdered 2 police officers and shot dead 2 soldiers. Most of the dissidents' victims are from within their own community. Unlike the Provisional IRA, the new IRA has limited weaponry. It's sufficient to wage a campaign, but not on the scale of the IRA's. After it called its ceasefire in 1994, the IRA decommissioned its huge arsenal, much of it from Libya, but not every weapon was destroyed.
We have seen it through forensic examination that some of the weaponry that we have seized off dissident Republicans would have had its origins in the stockpiles of the original PIRA. You've got some key figures, leadership figures, who didn't buy the dream of the peace process, who moved across, created these violent dissident groups, may have had access to some weaponry that was still available to them.
During the years of the conflict, there were well over 200 border crossings, official and unofficial. The main ones with police and army fortified checkpoints. They became a sitting target for IRA attacks. At one checkpoint outside Londonderry, or Derry, a hostage, Patrick Gillespie, was used to deliver a proxy bomb. He died in the explosion, along with 5 soldiers.
I think the uncertainty around Brexit and the border, is a concern, certainly from a policing perspective. We wouldn't want to see anything that looks like physical infrastructure at the border, primarily because we assess that could symbolically become the focus of attention and targeting by violent dissident Republican groups.
At the height of the so-called Troubles, border areas around Republican strongholds like Crossmaglen were death traps for the police and army, with cross-border hit-and-run attacks by the IRA. The memories are still there. To dissident Republicans like Paul Duffy, the border remains at the heart of the conflict.
When we talk about a border, obviously you're talking about an artificially created border here by Britain, once Britain claimed its jurisdiction over the 6 counties.
The pertinent question is, what is the relationship between Saoradh and the so-called new IRA? Does Saoradh support the continuing use of violence?
If we're talking about resistance to partition and resistance to British occupation, well, that resistance exists today, that there are armed groups out there who are involved in actions against the occupying forces.
Do you support those actions by those armed groups?
The first thing I will say, and I want to make quite clear, is that I'm not a member of any armed group, not involved in any armed group. Saoradh, as a political party, are not involved in armed actions. I understand why those activities are carried out, and I understand why an organisation such as the Irish Republican Army exists and exists today.
But you can't say that you support it.
No, and legally it prohibits anybody from getting into an engagement in an argument or debate or offering an analysis around support for any of those groups.
But I assume that you do.
Well, you can assume away, Peter.
Looking at the Saoradh March with its semi-paramilitary trappings, you could be forgiven for raising an eyebrow over Paul Duffy's comments.
Saoradh is the political voice of the new IRA.
Saoradh say that they have no connection whatsoever.
It's not my assessment. I think there's significant overlap between the leadership of both the new IRA and Saoradh.
As there was with Sinn Féin and the IRA.
And it's just history repeating itself. It's the same old rhetoric where people are trying to justify terrorism but distance themselves from it. So it's not an assessment that I think has any credibility. They are pretty much one and the same.
And your assessment of the leadership of Saoradh and the new IRA?
Not quite one and the same, but significant overlap between the leadership of the two components. So there are a number of people who are very senior in the new IRA who are also senior in the leadership of Saoradh, would be our assessment.
Saoradh denies the connection made by the Chief Constable.
Don't be fooled by votes. Don't be fooled by talk of border polls and referenda. The Irish people have not had democracy since the 1918 general election. British imperialism since that date has ruled Ireland on an alternating basis of military force or coercion. The only fly in the ointment is the looming storm that is Brexit.
Although all parties to the Brexit negotiations are agreed on the need to avoid a hard border with customs controls and checks, as yet there is no agreement on how that may be achieved. But there is agreement on the dangers and the risk to peace that was established by the Good Friday Agreement. Its 20th anniversary was celebrated in Belfast last month. Senator George Mitchell was its architect, wringing major concessions out of all the parties involved in the negotiations. Senator, does Brexit threaten the Good Friday Agreement?
Yes, it does, if not done the right way.
Why must there not be, in your view, a hard border?
Brexit was a decision democratically taken in a democratic society and therefore must be respected. I believe history will judge this to have been an unwise decision for the UK and its people, but in particular for the Republic of Ireland if there is a hard border. And I think a hard border will be devastating for the people of Ireland who didn't vote for it, who don't support it.
The determination to see the unfinished revolution through to a successful conclusion burns stronger than ever. Comrades, go from here today and advance the struggle for freedom.
Sinn Féin would argue that they too are struggling for freedom, but in a constitutional way.
In terms of them having the capacity, the ability, the strategy, and most particularly the support. There is no support within the broad Republican section for any return to conflict.
Those who are prepared to use violence to achieve their political objectives will seize on any opportunity to use violence to advance their interests and try to stir up a return to sectarian conflict. I don't think that they will gain any significant support in this society or in the Republic. But the possibility remains that they may try, and it is that against which we should guard.
The dissidents' prediction that Brexit, England's difficulty, will be Ireland's opportunity, is likely to be a fond hope. A hard border is unlikely. Nevertheless, dissidents will probably be undaunted. As Gerry Adams once said of the IRA, they haven't gone away, you know. With regards to the new IRA, the dissidents could say the same.